I have the ability to focus my energy and my problem solving on honestly more interesting problems.
Welcome to CTOs, protect me from the where CTOs share the tales and the comments. So start a few big names and the visions unfold. How many CTOs will share the stories untold?
This has been such a fun conversation, Justin, and I feel like we've touched on some really cool journey about this amazing product that you've built, and we've really touched on like how you've built this thing and why you're getting so much joy out of it, no pun intended, and why I think that this moment of technology has made it possible. Um, if there's a I guess the question I have for you would be, being that you've been in the trenches now as a very, very small team, moving really, really, really fast, building something very, very cool, have you reached an opinion about what's going to happen to the software programming jobs now that AI is where it's at this point? Are you generally uh, bearish on, are software developers going to go away? And if you're not a embedded product uh, visionary, then you've got no hope. Or what's your take on this? Will AI kill software engineering jobs?
Eventually, eventually, I think it will. I don't I'm not going to speculate as to the timeline on that. Seeing what I've seen happen on the screen, just even in the last week, and by the way, last week it was a model that's now outdated, and so maybe it would have taken less time if I did it now. Seeing that stuff unfold in front of my eyes, I don't. I mean, I think it's a cynical take, but unfortunately, it's also a realistic take. There's just no way a company's going to spend money on something that they can push a button and, well, at least spend a lot less on, and make happen almost instantly. So I think eventually the answer to the question, what's going to happen with the current sort of incarnation of a software engineer, that there it doesn't seem like that has a long lifespan given the developments. That said, I think that there is going to be a continuing lifespan for it, a longer lifespan for it in certain industries. Um, one of the risks that you have with AI is that it makes a mistake, and depending on the kind of company you are, risk tolerance is going to differ wildly. Like if you're a bank and you have one software engineer running rogue doing Claude code all day, and unfortunately Claude code decides to like reassign $1 billion to 10 million different people, that's not an acceptable risk for that industry. And so I think there's going to be a lot of time before AI takes over in that and in healthcare and so on. But I'm an optimist, to a fault sometimes, and I don't think about it as like software engineers going away. Um, I think that what makes a software engineer a valuable person in the economy is that they're problem solvers. Like, um, they are able to come into a new situation with all kinds of noise and uncertainties and say, this is the best way to solve this problem. We need to be able to chat with a doctor. This is the best way to build that. And right now, the problem they're solving is at one level of the technology spectrum, right? Like they're trying to figure out what the architecture of code to do that is. And the truth is like that's been solved enough and will eventually have been solved enough that it doesn't need to be answered that way anymore, right? Like it's that may become a solved problem, whereas there are still going to be problems like what is the best experience we can give a user. One thing that has been interesting, and this is just my final anecdote on this question, is I do these riddles, and I do them every day. And in fact, today, this is what I wrote about in the blurb, that I send after people solve it. I answered the question that I get quite a bit, which is why don't you just use AI to generate the riddles? Like you wouldn't be like staying like up at night trying to figure out a riddle when it doesn't come easily, and sometimes they don't. And the answer to the question, why don't I use AI to generate these riddles, is because AI is not good at generating riddles. If you try to generate a riddle with AI, even if I feed it as training data all of the ones I've written, it still does something like, what's black and white and red all over. And the truth is, it's great at understanding the technical form of a riddle. It's great at looking at its training data and understanding what it is I'm asking for. But the kinds of riddles I write actually have a voice, and they have some there's creativity behind it. So it still can't solve that problem. Like GPT-5 probably still won't be able to solve that problem, and it means that I'm trying to solve a different problem. I'm not gonna like today. I wouldn't have spent almost any time trying to solve the problem of how do I code the text that goes out to people. I probably would have been able to pass that off, and I would have been delighted for it, by the way, because I didn't enjoy that. But instead, I have the ability to focus my energy and my problem solving on honestly more interesting problems. Like, what is it like to receive a riddle for a person? Like, and what makes them want to come back the next day? And these are things that I think it's going to be quite a bit of time before AI catches up on. So software engineers are just going to change.
In some ways, what I hear, the way I think about it, and what I hear you saying is that the engineering part of what we do is moving up the stack, right? I think you maybe have described it this way, Brad. In some ways, AI is just the latest compiler, right? We're writing in a different language. It's a natural language prompt, which the generative AI compiles into some code, which then gets compiled into some other code, and ultimately gets compiled down into bits, right? And so we're kind of moving up the stack, almost like, for lack of a better description, the product requirements document is the code now. And
That's it. That's it.
there's Gherkin, right, where you write these test automations using this Gherkin format. You guys know what that is? It's almost like we're pushing our way up almost to test-driven development, but it's requirement-driven development, and it gets compiled all the way down.
Yep. What about you guys? Is your like what's your experience been like with the AI stuff happening? You're at TaskRabbit now, is that right,
I
Scott?
am. My
Is that recent?
well, a startup I was at got acquired about a year ago, and so that's how I ended up there.
Got it.
Um, our team has been experimenting with it and using it more and more, and some people having a lot of great success. I have a great success story to share from just this week. We have a channel where people sort of post things they did that worked or didn't work or whatever. One engineer had a React app. It wasn't real big. It was about 3 or 4 thousand lines of code. It had 3% test coverage. He said it took him about 4 or 5 hours of writing some prompt and then writing some different prompts and so on and so forth, and got it to greater than 90% test coverage. And to me, that is a very high leverage 4 or 5 hours. It wrote 160 tests, so I don't think you could have written 160 tests in that time. And it started out, at first it wrote like 40, and then he kind of had to keep on prompting it to get it to do different things. And he did he did have to correct some stuff and so on and so forth, but he got it to a pretty good spot. And so the engineers are learning how to use the tool and to get really productive. Another example, someone who's sort of like one of our SREs, the other day he posted this message: "I'm never writing another shell script again." And just sort of narrated his prompts of like how I got, I don't know what he was using, but whatever AI it was to write this shell script that he needed, that he didn't quite know how to do, and he didn't have a lot of shell scripting experience, and so on and so forth. And he had some, but he didn't consider himself an expert. So people are using it, and more and more, and I think it's good. I don't think they're at where you're at, but we also have a little bit different code base as well. So I think there's something there. Is it going to replace engineers? I don't know, because I don't know yet if it can handle the complexity that's out there. I mean, just I don't know, just like scaling and security and things like that. It might not have yet. It's going to need something there for a while, but it's a new era, that's for sure. And this is the one thing I've been preaching to my team, and I preach it to people on this podcast. I preach it to my kids, everybody. The people who learn how to use it are going to go further in their careers than the people who don't. And the analogy I use is like the IDE. I'm old enough when we started doing this, and Visual Studio was relatively new, and there were some people who were like, well, why would you use that, right? And it's like, look what all this stuff it does for you. It has a debugger in it. I mean, I'm sure that Vim or Emacs had a debugger in it too, but um, and I'm not trying to get into those kind of religious wars. But the point is that some people embraced those tools, and others didn't. And I think that we're in a phase, a part of the cycle where you gotta. I mean, you don't have to embrace it, but the people who do embrace it are gonna. It's gonna boost their careers.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a big believer of where you're at, Justin, being the cutting edge of what people that take your path of like, I'm a super small team and we're gonna use AI to build things as fast as possible. I think that's the path forward, and I think that for an organization like that's got legacy code and a larger team, I think it's going to be much harder for them to adopt. You know, our team, there's like 8 of us, and I am insisting that everybody should be using AI. And I, I'm writing a ton of code as part of this code base that I'm working on, and I would say that my coding productivity is a probably. I mean, I already was a pretty fast developer. Like I could code pretty fast anyway. But I think with AI, I'm like, it, you know, at least 5x of what I was in my normal state. So literally just today, like we had a bunch of old code that we didn't have any unit tests for, and while in the middle of just like, you know, prepping for like a bunch of meetings today, just in the background I had it writing unit tests, and it like, a whole bunch of stuff went from zero coverage to 100% coverage, and I can just give it super simple prompts and boom, immediately I have high quality unit tests. I do almost all of my technical reasoning. I open up ChatGPT and I start talking with it. Like,
Yeah.
here's a problem that I want to solve. Here's what I'm currently thinking. Maybe here's some code that we have. Let's talk through how to do this. Um, and I think that and so it's writing my technical documents for me. But again, it's like I use it as a collaborator. So it's like I'm challenging it. I'm asking it to challenge me, and then together we get a result. And
Yep.
then and it's everything that I do. It's touching
Yeah.
everything.
It's a good resource. I would say, Scott, to respond to uh, your your opinion that when can it handle the complexity of some of these bigger code bases? I think that is the question, and that's sort of the thing that the industry is waiting for. As a sort of piece of advice or an insight that I've gleaned over the past little while, and again, this was just a happy accident, but if you're able to create a monolith for your repository,
It handles it better.
well, it's not just that it handles it better. It it almost does the testing for you, because when you want to make a change, you can ask as part of the task that you've assigned it to make sure that that works across all of the different things. And so, what I want to impart here is that um, there's a good rationale, I think, even if you don't think the tools are at the point of being able to really go nuts on an entire big legacy code base today. I think there's still a rationale for migrating some of that stuff into at least a place, whether it's a monolith or something else that you can do, where it's easy for whatever's looking at it. I mean, by the way, easy for a person too, right? But also easy for an AI um, to be able to see the whole thing. Because the more splintered it is, the more likely it is to make a change that, like you said, it didn't understand the complexities of this problem because it couldn't know that like this client needs this in a certain format, and so it changed it and it broke. Um, and and the other technical thing I'll pitch here is another accident. I decided to go with GraphQL um, for the back end because I don't know, I was just hyped and I was like, that looks shiny. Who does REST anymore, right? Well, it turns out the learning curve on GraphQL was a little bit higher than I wanted it to be, but the incredible thing about GraphQL is if you're going to have any kind of AI working inside your apps, my entire app really is AI because it's getting messages and figuring out what to say. So the whole thing is AI, but it's also trying to figure out what actions it can take. Like, do we give this person a refund because they're upset? Like, our restaurant doesn't do any customer service. Like 100% of our cases are resolved by the bot. So the bot can take actions. And if you have your APIs, and this is possible in REST too, by the way, but GraphQL just sort of forces you to do it because basically you're writing a schema, and that describes all the queries and all the mutations that you can do. If you have that, all of your operations that are possible in your ecosystem in one document, it is extremely easy to feed that entire document to the AI system that you're using and tell it you have the authority to call this one, this one, this one, and this one, and this is the signature. And then suddenly your AI system, I mean, it's a little scary actually, but it's incredibly powerful. And like the only negative call I get about this is sometimes they're like, the thing is giving too many promotions. Like people are asking for promotion and it's always people pleasing, and you gotta pull back on that.
Pull back on
But
the people pleasing.
that's right. But those are the two pieces of advice I would say if you have the bandwidth at whatever code base you're working on to sort of maneuver it in a way that will make it easier for your team to get gains from those systems that are out there and that are, definitely evolving quickly. Get stuff in one place, get it in like a consolidated format, and you'll just see like these incredible things that are possible even today.
It's the revenge of the monolith.
Maybe,
There's
maybe.
the title of the episode.
There you go.
That's it.
All right. Thanks a lot, Justin.
See you guys.
All right, bye. Take care.
This episode of How Many CTOs Does It Take podcast was edited by Saffron Hefta-Gaub. Our theme song was AI generated by Brad. Please follow us on all the social media platforms at How Many CTOs Pod. You can find us on YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Threads, X, TikTok, and Patreon, or at our website at howmanyctospod.com. And remember to rate, review, and subscribe on the podcast platform of your choice. Thanks for listening.